Hi, I'm Dr. Kimberlee Mendoza, and this is another episode of Blue Fire Faith. As I'm trying to prepare for this, my throat will not clear. And I finally said, you know what? I'm just going to do this. I have something very vulnerable and powerful to share with you today. I'm going to call it a pay it forward kind of sermon. This is a sermon that not all of it is my original content, in that I was sitting in a woman's event on Monday, and the pastor kind of spoke about this. The pastor's wife, spoke about this, and it was just so powerful to me, and it's such a personal conversation that I need to have, because I know I'm not the only one that struggles with this. And so I felt like I needed to really share what I learned and what I took away from the sermon. And before I do that, though, I want to share with you a story. Years ago, a pastor friend of mine had shared this story, and it always stuck with me, and it's always been one of those things in the back of my head, that there was this young man who had done so well on the piano that he made it to Carnegie Hall. And if you don't know anything about Carnegie Hall, it's like the ultimate place to go play the piano. And he played his full set, and as soon as he finished, he got up and he walked out with his head down, even though he had a standing ovation. Everybody was standing up, and he was like walking out with his head down, looking very depressed. And so someone came up to him and said, "Why do you look so depressed? I mean, you just had a standing O. Everybody was standing." And he said, "Not everybody." Apparently, up in the top of the auditorium, his piano teacher was up there from when he was a young kid, and that man did not stand up. And so all these people are cheering him. All these people are saying he's doing great. But his focus was on the one person who didn't stand, who meant something. This reminds me so much of, like, I don't know if you've heard this expression, but if you walk into a room and there are 99 people in the room that love you and one person who doesn't, we'll get fixated on the one person who doesn't. And then we try to morph or manipulate whatever we're doing, and we make bad decisions based on the one person rather than, look at the bigger picture. And ultimately, we only have an audience of one, and that is Jesus. That's really the only person we really need to impress. And what's sad is when we try to impress man, when we're trying to impress all these other people, we're literally not impressing the one person we need to impress, and that is God. Because our focus should be completely on what He wants and how He sees us, not how the world sees us. So I'm going to get really vulnerable with you. I still struggle with this. This is probably one thorn in my side. Just like Paul had one, I have one. Mine is insecurity. People think because I speak and because I've, published books and stuff, I must have it all together. But the reality is I was a peer rejected child, and I, went through the divorce situation and just being left alone a lot. And when I hated lunchtime at school because it meant sitting alone. And I was just a funny looking kid who mom didn't have any money. So she cut my hair herself, and she bought my clothes, or she sewed my clothes actually most of the time. And I just looked so nerdy. And so I just didn't have a lot of friends. It wasn't until I think my junior year of high school that I got my first best friend. And so that took a toll on me. To this day, when I walk in a room, I have the first thought of, nobody here probably likes me. It's dumb. I'm aware of that. So I went to this sermon, and it's amazing that I can be as old as I am and still be struggling with something like this. And to have somebody speak life into me in this way, because it's just such a silly thing, but I think it's so important. One of the coolest things that I thought she said all night, and I hope you write this down and you put it somewhere if you're feeling this way, is she said, when the Israelites went to fight Goliath, they were afraid of him because of how big he was. They saw him as being too big to win. Whereas David saw Goliath as so big he couldn't miss. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. Perspective, how we see ourselves, how we see the enemy, how we see the things that are right in front of us. Every single element of that perception is going to dictate how we react and how we think. And if our mindset is so fixated on things that are not of God, and if you're feeling insecure like I get sometimes, you're not looking at yourself the way God looks at you. God created you the way you are, and he absolutely loves you the way you are. Yeah, sure, he wants you to change things about yourself. All of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. We have things that we could fix about ourselves, but he still loves us. It's like your child. Your child messes up, but you still love them just the same. And that's how it is. And so we have to get our focus on the right things. Now, like I said, this is a sermon for me. It touched me so deeply. And so I want to just talk for a second about Mary and Martha, because now I'm getting into where the sermon came from, like what some of the stuff she talked about. And I walked away from it with something else that she hadn't said that I just thought was really cool to share. So Mary and Martha, you've heard the story. Jesus comes to town, Mary and Martha, and if you need to read the story for yourself, it is in Luke 10, starting in verse 38. And he comes to town, and Martha is running around, trying to get everything fixed and ready. And Mary is at the feet of Jesus, and Mary is basically listening to his words. And Martha gets upset with Mary. I'm sure we've done this before. Hey, hello, I'm doing all the work. Why is nobody helping me? I mean, I'm type A, so I'm always doing stuff. And I do wonder sometimes, why is nobody helping me? And then Jesus's response was that Mary has chosen the right thing, that you don't need to worry about all that. This is what you need to be doing, because he's only going to be with them a short time longer. And so sharing things with them is the most important thing in that moment. Now, the pastor's wife, she spoke about the two perspectives of Mary and Martha. And I walked away and started thinking, there's a third perspective here that isn't really addressed clearly. And that is Jesus' perspective. Now, she did say something about, how we need to, listen to what Jesus is saying too. But I think it's important that as we go through things, as we're trying to figure out our perspective and what we should be doing or not doing, that we remember, what would Jesus do, right? That was that famous bracelet that everybody was wearing, but it really is true. What would Jesus's perspective be in that moment, whatever it is you're walking into? So if you're walking into a crowded room, it's really funny because I'm an outgoing person when I know people, but if I don't know you, I become very shy. I will sit in the back of the room. I will not just walk up to anybody. The only time I'm able to do that is if I'm either in charge, or I have a task that somebody has given me, or I know everybody. If not, I'm kind of like afraid to reach out. It's weird. I don't know. Anyways, so if I was walking into the room with Christ, and everybody knew him, then I would feel probably pretty comfortable just being in his shadow and not really doing anything else, right? Well, Christ lives in me. So when I walk into the room, I should walk in with the confidence of knowing that the Savior of the universe has chosen me to be his child, and I should walk in with the same confidence. If I can look at myself through Jesus's eyes, I have a stronger ability to actually walk in that. I have friends who are afraid to death of public speaking. When they get up to do a sermon, they get really nervous. And I always say to them, don't speak to the people in the audience, speak unto the Lord. So as you're speaking, you're not speaking to the audience, you're speaking to the Lord. I do these videos. There are days when 2 people watch this video. And then there's other days, I have one that has 100 and something. Yay, that's really cool because I want to reach people. However, at the end of the day, I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking unto the Lord. I am doing what he has called me to do. And until he tells me to stop speaking, then I'm going to keep speaking. As a matter of fact, I just got another doctor's report. I got to go back and get scanned in my neck again. And I'm telling you, the enemy does not want me to speak. He keeps messing with my throat. Even trying to get on to this today, I could not clear my throat to save my life. But like I said, until God tells me you're not supposed to be speaking, I'm not going to be quiet. So that's what we need to do. We need to do whatever we're doing unto the Lord. And You've heard this expression before. This verse before. It's not a new verse, but Philippians 4, starting in verse 8, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And so if you're dwelling on, maybe you said something to someone, because I struggle with this all the time. Maybe you said something to somebody and you're just like, oh my gosh, and you're playing it over and over and over and over in your head. You need to just say stop and then say, God, did I do what I should have done? If I didn't, forgive me. And if I did, help me to release it. We need to just let that go and stop, focusing on things that are just going to take us down a really dark corner. Once again, I'm going to be vulnerable with you. Right before this sermon, I was in a really dark space in my head. I'm not going to go into details of what was happening in my head, but there were some insecurities that were just coming out. And something I hadn't felt in a while was really coming back to me, and I'm journaling about it, and I'm dwelling on it, and I'm letting it just affect me in just the worst way possible. And then I went into this sermon and I realized, I have allowed myself for 2 days to focus on this negative thing rather than focus on the positive. And as soon as I gave those 2 things up that I had been focusing on to the Lord, I had peace. I had a complete just change. It was instant. Like God said, here's what you need to do. I felt it. I knew it in that sermon. And I actually walked up and told her afterwards, and she has no idea how much of a breakthrough that moment was for me. And what's interesting is she said she was prepared to do a different sermon and felt like God was telling her to do that sermon. And now I'm sharing that sermon with you. And so her obedience is now going beyond just the 100 people or so that were in that room that night. Hopefully now more people online will hear it as well. It might be 5 of you, but if anybody does, and if you like this or, you feel like other people need to hear this message, then pass it on, share it. It's so important to get the message out. There's so much negative stuff in the world and people are trying to do something positive, and we have to share those things. And I just feel like this is so powerful. I just had to share it. Isaiah 43:18 says, forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. And one of the things she pointed out too was that most of our insecurities, most of the things that mess up our perspective are based on things from the past. If you're not forgiving someone, or like my insecurities are based on things from the past, like your perception of your reality is not always based on what is actually happening. A lot of times your perception is based on a reality that doesn't even exist anymore. You're not that person anymore. The people in your life are not those people anymore. So why are we still allowing that to speak into our life? Now, if you have somebody in your life that does make you feel that way, it's time to cut them out. And that's even family. Sometimes people are like, well, I can't cut family out. Sure you can, if you're married, it gets a little tricky, but if it's not your spouse, you can just, love them from afar. It's okay. You don't have to dislike them or stop loving them. You can still love them. I love you over there. It's all good. My grandpa used to have a sign that was on the door of his house that says, everybody makes us happy. Some by coming, some by going. So, you can love people whether they're in your circle or not. So anyways, I think it's really important that we learn to remember that Jesus loves us. And so often we just get focused on the wrong thing, and our perception, our perspective, like it just gets wonky. And this is literally the most personal topic I could pick, because it is something that I still struggle with every day. And this sermon has really helped me start to refocus. And I am praying for deliverance from this, because I need to see myself the way God sees me. You need to see yourself the way God sees you. You need to not allow, I just heard today, as a matter of fact, that there was a young man, or he might not be young, he's a man, who should be teaching. He has a degree. he should be teaching, but he was told by somebody else a couple years ago that he was the worst presenter he had ever heard. And so this man has never stepped into his calling or his dream. And I'm like, that's so unfortunate. Do not let the voice of one affect your future. If God is telling you in your head, in your heart, and in your mind that you are called to something, do not let another person tell you differently. Would you believe I've had men tell me I should not be preaching? Well, you know what? I have been called by the King of Kings. Jesus himself has revealed to me many things. I have seen miracles happen when I pray over people. I have had my own husband is happy with me doing this. So if we want to go with the hierarchy thing, my husband is okay with me preaching. And I am not going to let man tell me what to do. You should not let man dictate your life. The only person that should be able to dictate your life is Jesus Christ. And if anybody else tells you anything different than what he has told you, rebuke it. I mean it. Don't let parents, don't let family members, don't let colleagues and bosses. My insecurity, every single time I'm about to get over it, I have somebody speak into it and they'll say that thing that is always making me worried. You got to rebuke that stuff. That is not of God. You have to be 100% in line with what he says about you, what he's called you to. And I believe that if you start praying that way, that God will bring people into your heart, into your life that can start speaking into your heart. And it will be a confirmation that this is what you're supposed to be doing. And so I know this is probably a lot more passionate than you were probably expecting, but this is something I am passionate about, that I am working through, and this is a pay it forward sermon. Once again, if you like it, please put like on Facebook. That allows Facebook to actually allow other people to see it. I don't know if you know that or not. Also, share it to other people if you really felt like there's somebody else in your life that is dealing with, how they see themselves, their perspective, their insecurities, their unforgiveness, whatever it is that is, they're like zoning in on. And one more thing, let me just talk about forgiveness really quickly. If you have not forgiven somebody, you're hurting yourself. You're not hurting them. They've moved on. They're doing their own thing. And you're the one that's still suffering for whatever it is they did. So stop focusing and fixating on whatever they did to you. Let it go, and you'll feel better, and your mindset will be better. Anyways, I think I've probably talked enough, longer than usual, but I just really felt passionate about this topic. God bless you. I hope I see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.